Good morning. My name is Melissa Connolly. I have had the honor and privilege of chairing the commission over the last year, but also am the CEO of One Goal. Today's a really exciting day for us. It is the day that we formally release what I think has been a labor of love. When I'm looking out to my fellow commissioners, we really tried to pour our heart and soul into this work over the last year. The Launchpad for Life, a vision for purposeful pathways for all students, is a research-backed, actionable vision for how high schools can serve as a launchpad rather than a finish line. We tried really hard to make this not just a report, but something that felt useful, actionable, like it could actually deliver on some of the promises we've made to our kids. So over the past year, Education First, with the support of the Gates Foundation, brought together 21 incredible commissioners across education and workforce, alongside 3 extraordinary young adult commissioners, one of whom you will get to hear from in just a minute, to answer an incredibly urgent question. What would it take for every single student to graduate high school with real momentum into their future? So I'm going to share a few thoughts with you today as chair, as CEO, but I think more importantly, as a mother of 2 high school students. So I remember, like I'm sure many moms do, the day that you sent your child off to kindergarten. I literally have this image in my head of my son with a backpack that was just about as big as he was, looking like he was gonna topple over at any minute. And his kindergarten teacher giving him a hug and welcoming him into the classroom and telling him to sit down at his desk with a piece of paper and crayons that were laid out and said, draw a picture of what you want to be when you grow up. What I didn't realize is that actually he wouldn't be asked that question when it matters most for him. He's a senior in high school now, and recently I asked him about his experience, and he said, Mom, I feel like my school mostly left me to figure out my path on my own. Well, that still worked for me because you're my mom. I know several of my friends were let down by this process and are currently feeling pretty lost. Our work on this commission is much less a report and much more of a commitment to do the work ahead that will ensure at graduation, every single young person can say, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know who can help me get there. This is the standard. Within 5 years, an estimated 85% of good jobs will require post-secondary education or industry-recognized credentials. For years, we have sadly framed college or career as a false choice. That framing has continued to sideline high school career preparation work and left many students without a coherent pathway. And we need to, for the first time, say and, college and career, as one of my fellow commissioners remind us every single time we came together. We need pathways that ultimately deliver on the best of both. While 78% of Gen Z students say it's important to determine their career paths before graduation, only 13% feel fully prepared to do so. Over half of young adults say that they struggled after high school. High school is still too often a series of disconnected experiences. You have advising over here, random acts of dual and credit over here, maybe an internship if you're extremely lucky, but they are rarely designed as an integrated or coherent pathway. It should not be a maze. I had an incredible mentor of mine say, you know, Melissa, it's so awesome that you were able to get out of truancy and get into a good college and ultimately graduate with multiple degrees. And I said, yes, but I shouldn't have felt like I needed to be an Olympian to be able to do that. Darrell, your voice on the commission has been so incredibly insightful. And I think while many of us may still feel young, the world was a very different place when we went through this transition. And so if you can speak to what your experience has been, I know we would really value it.
Indeed. Yeah. So for many,
You're a lot taller than I am.
no, yeah, just go ahead and do this. This is a lot easier. So for many in my generation, pathways has always been an abstract concept that utilizes linearity as the vessel for success in action. And for the past decade, the typical pathway model has been mired with linearism and disconnected pathways or disconnected experiences that disintegrates the picture of a graduate of a sustainable, ambitious life into parts that are not connected and in some way are decorative. And so for the past few years, I've been navigating this abstract concept to generate a blueprint for what a successful and ambitious life truly is. And so that journey began in middle school. And in middle school, I was exposed to this phenomenal concept called the science fair. And so in middle school, I had no clue what I wanted to do in my life. I just wanted to get 4.0s, come back home, have some ice cream and enjoy the fruits and labors and enjoy my work. And so in middle school, I started my first science fair project, and that was on tsunamis. And right then and there, I'm like, you know what, let's go to school and become a hydrologist and study geology. And so over the few years, from middle school to high school, that fundamentally changed. In 8th grade, I went on to develop AI that predicted the point shift mutation of COVID-19's virulence factors that causes dementia. And so from developing the AI, I said, hey, let's study virology and get into infectious disease and study the inner workings of Ebola and Zika. And so for the longest in high school, I'm like, you know what, let's go to middle school. And so in high school, things changed towards a really great trajectory, to a really good point. And so in high school, I was exposed to an internship with University of Akron. They said, hey, we love your work with AI. We love your work with working with climate change and figuring out how that impacts viruses. So come on board and work on developing a plastic that utilizes CO2 as its building block. And so for the past 2-3 years, I was working with University of Akron, which is 2 hours up the road if you want to check that out while you're here. Been working with them in developing a plastic that utilizes CO2, and that research was then acquired by the Department of Defense and Lockheed Martin. And so I said, hey, maybe, thank you. So from there I said, hey, let's move from medical school and go to chemistry. And so for the past 3 years, I'm an undergrad right now. I'm undergrad at Berea College studying poli-sci and economics. And so what's interesting is that I didn't originally start there. In high school, senior year, I'm like, let's go study chemistry. And so wanted to do chemistry, and recently that changed. I said, hey, chemistry is great, but the root of all change is policy and making sure that all these different experiences from my work-based learning experiences are connected into kind of a vision to bridge science, policy, and economics together to make common sense policy. And so policy is the root of all change. I'm sure we're all aware of that. And so that's what led to that change to political science and economics. And surprisingly, right now, things are changing again because I'm working with MIT in developing a way to extract uranium from seawater for nuclear power and also for ensuring the United States is an energy superpower. And it's funny enough because none of these are connected, but what is connected is the fact that these pathways, my mentors along the way, have provided autonomy and provided a sense of independence and making sure that, hey, we love your work, we love what you're doing, we love that you're ambitious, but we want you to go out and find that solution to that problem. We'll hold your hand part of the way, but we're going to ensure that you find that solution, you find that ambition, and you keep that going for decades and decades to come to spread to the next generation to get things done and kind of build that non-abstract model of a pathway. And so with that, I kind of forgot the transition where I'm so sorry, but I'll go ahead and transition it to you, so thank you.
Every time he talks, I'm like, we're going to be all right. So pretty different world than maybe many of us grew up in, but hopefully a clear vision of what's possible. And I have to just emphasize, I think the part, Darrell, of your story that just continues to sit with me is the role that mentorship and mentors played at various points when you knew you had to pivot as the world changed. And I think that that's what we want for all of our young people. So on the commission, we ultimately aligned on 3 core experiences, some of them you heard Darrell speak to, that we believe all young people deserve. The first is high quality advising. It is that mentorship that Darrell described. It's what builds motivation, self-efficacy, and a strong college-going or occupational identity. In a recent poll, 80% of students said that they would feel more confident about their futures if they had better access to college and career planning. And it's especially impactful when that young person knows that the person that is giving them the advice cares about them. Accelerated coursework, including dual enrollment, early college, and advanced CTE, builds confidence and momentum. Decades of research show that when done well, it increases graduation rates, engagement, and post-secondary completion. And last but certainly not least, career-connected learning. It's what bridges classroom instruction with real-world application. It ignites motivation and builds both technical and durable skills through meaningful relationships with adults in the workplace. And none of these concepts are new to us in the room. On the commission, what we focused on is the multiplier. The multipliers when advising accelerated coursework and career-connected learning are explicitly and intentionally designed to cultivate purpose, belonging, and social capital. Students don't just participate, they ultimately persist. Purpose becomes something that students practice, not something they're expected to declare at one moment of their life, but something that evolves, just like you heard with Darrell. Belonging becomes a driver of engagement, not a bonus, and social capital, the networks of relationships that open doors, become intentional and not a result of luck. From that vision flow 4 recommendations. First, all students must be provided with a purposeful pathway. Not some college kids, some career kids, all students deserve a purposeful pathway. Second, purpose, belonging, and social capital must be hardwired into the pathways we're designing. Third, we must move the goalposts beyond high school diploma towards economic mobility. And fourth, student transitions must be a shared responsibility across sectors. When systems don't talk to each other, it creates friction. And we all took 11th grade physics, and we know that friction slows momentum, slows things down, slows the progress that young people can make.
And so on that friction, to overcome the friction challenge of pathways in this new generation of education, this generation demands a change to the way we disseminate capital, disseminate intellectual labor and monetary capital for the creation of a future that protects and advances our republic. And what satisfies these demands is the facilitation of the right environment that rewards adventure, healing, curiosity, an environment that provides substrate to this generation to grow, learn, and curate the tools for the future. In this revitalized view of pathways enables students to attack the ideas of tomorrow with unrelenting force that transforms their relationship with their advisor from a typical staff member in school to a shareholder on that student's venture capital project that was obviously funded by their mom's or dad's contribution to college or contribution to post-secondary. And most importantly, this revitalized view transforms a work-based learning experience into pursuit to further the great American experiment of laissez-faire capitalism. And when you start to transition to your career, you don't start over. Instead, you utilize your community and capital to build the empires of tomorrow. This is what the next generation of education looks like, and I'm very happy to share this with you guys.
So I hope you're seeing the role Darrell played on the commission alongside his other young adult commissioners. I think what he is asking us to do and what he asked us to do across the last year was level up. What we thought was good enough or possible is not. You hear Darrell's experience, and he would say to us, I appreciate all the work that you are doing to make high school better, and where's workforce? Bring them to the table. I want these lived experiences of the jobs ultimately that I want to have when I grow up. I am so excited to continue this conversation with some members from the commission so that you can see firsthand some of the work that we are committing to moving forward. So let's turn the conversation to what it would actually take to create these purposeful pathways. I would love to welcome Paul Fain and my fellow commissioners.
Be careful.
Welcome to Columbus. Oh, can you all hear me? Great. So Darrell's a tough act to follow, but we're going to try. So we've heard in the report, one of the mandates here is purposeful pathways. And to give our expert speakers here a chance to address their work and how it relates to Purposeful Pathways. I'd love if you could just start with a specific example of how you've seen this play out in the ground with an actual student. Let's start with you, please.
Sounds great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erica Giampietro, board chair at the Mass Alliance for Early College. And I'll start with an example of Anne. I was with a student last week. Anne is a student a graduate of New Heights Early College High School in Brockton, Massachusetts. And I'll sort of paint this picture, but also acknowledge that there's many flavors of this work. And by the way, on the commission, I think we all were looking at your models across the country as it's a predication of the report. So I don't pretend that this is the only model. But I was talking to Anne about her early college experience, and here's what she described. She grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts, a historically industrial town, lots of community assets, but also real struggles with economic mobility. Her high school graduates 50% of students with their associate's degree at high school graduation. The way this looks in terms of the components of the framework we just saw, accelerated coursework. Her high school has a partnership with the community college and the state university nearby. So Anne was getting, when she graduated with her associate's degree a couple days before she got her high school diploma. That was a liberal arts degree, but she had sort of a focus in the sciences. In the beginning of high school, those professors were coming to the high school campus. By the end, she was going to the college campus and really getting that exposure on the college campus. When it comes to high quality advising, she had what's called a college liaison. This is someone who would go to classes with them, particularly in the beginning of high school, and then on the off days, did you check out the syllabus? Where are you at with your homework? Do we need to go through some extra help on the content? And then towards the end of high school, this is the same person who is walking you step by step through the FAFSA application, having those questions about what you want to do with your life, et cetera. And when it comes to career-connected learning, Anne had an internship the summer after her junior year at a lab where they were researching early detection of ovarian cancer. She had great experience, and that really helped drive her sense of purpose. She wants to ultimately go work in a lab and eventually become a professor herself. So all of these things were done in an integrated way. They really drove that sense of purpose, sense of belonging, social capital. The person who was her, the leader of her lab, wrote her college recommendation letter, social capital there. Lots of examples I could go into on the others. But I think what you see in these examples is, from the outside, students who are engaged. And what you see when you kind of peel back the curtains and go behind the stage is a lot of adult coordination across high school, college, increasingly workforce, policymakers, our state administration has been great. So all of those things coming together and really weaving.
Thanks, Erica. Jamie, can you give us Purposeful Pathways from your context at the Chamber?
Sure, it's great to be with y'all this morning. My name is Jamie Francis with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I am thinking about one of our colleagues from Illinois, Kim Kuchenbrod, who serves as a work-based learning administrator in the state, and she loves giving this example when she was with an economic development organization called Vermilion Advantage, when she was playing a liaison role between the school district and the employer community. And so both of those sectors supported her role to sit in the school for a couple of days a week, whereas other days she was at the economic development office meeting with employers, and she would meet with students consistently to talk to them about their career pathways. And she met a young man who said, I don't have any intention to go to college. I like working with my hands. I want to go immediately into employment. And this was when he was about a sophomore or junior in high school. She got him on a youth apprenticeship track and introduced him to a manufacturing company in the community that was looking for young hires. He was able to complete that experience and really got excited about the opportunity to continue his learning in that space. And the company said, if you would be willing to come back to us during the summer and maybe come visit us during winter breaks, we would be happy to support your post-secondary experience. So he started in a technical school, then decided, I want to keep learning. The company said, okay, great, let's continue. This is working out really well for us, and we'd love to see you emerge in this industry. And so they pushed him through to a 4-year degree program. After he graduated from his 4-year degree, he did not end up going to that company that supported his education, but they were excited because he was continuing to grow and emerge in the industry and had every intention of sharing his experience with others in the community. And the company said, well worth it, because they were able to bring a really talented individual who initially had absolutely no intention of pursuing post-secondary education and make him a leader within industry. So I love examples like that where we can see that career-connected learning piece come in, but it is scary to think that had he not had that opportunity to work with a leader like Kim and show him a different path, that it might not have worked out for him as well.
Thanks, Jamie. Laz, you're up. Can you give us your view from District 14?
Sure. So I want to tell the story about Xander. And in District 214, the entire focus of our work is around students discovering their future and setting the table for them to be able to do that. So Xander had taken all of our hands-on type classes. He wanted to work with his hands. He happened to be in an automotive class and trying to figure out what his future is. He learned about our apprenticeship program, and we have, particularly in the healthcare sector, really the #1 pathway of interest in our school district. We have about 12,000 students. 20% of the students are interested in healthcare. We have a good partnership with our local hospitals where we have students working as apprentices. Well, Xander wanted to be a biomedical tech repair person. I have no idea what that was. But what's so fabulous about it is that he is now an apprentice at Northwest Community Hospital as a biomedical equipment technician. So it turns out Sodexo has contracts with hospitals across the country to do this work, and there's a department in every hospital that repairs the equipment so they don't have to send it out, literally life-saving equipment. So because of his agency and him challenging us and telling us what he really wanted to do, we were able to go to the hospital. They had never had this request before, and we created a new apprenticeship just for him. And I just find that story a powerful reflection of what's at the heart of this work and in the report.
Thanks, Laz. Stacy, you're up.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I am going to go off of I'm going to go off script, even the script that I wrote for myself. I've been a college and career advisor for students in public schools through a nonprofit being funded by folks like the Gates Foundation. Today, I'm a systems level kind of enterprise leader at a university working with the system. I have all of these things. I have a dual perspective and students, working with them and their families, helping them make informed decisions about, I have all of this written down, but I am motivated today to change my script based on something Melissa started this conversation out with, and I hope you know, and I hope you figure out from my rambling how this all connects, at least to me. And it is, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know who can help get me there. That's what, if you don't take anything else from this, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know who can help me get there. When I came to this conference yesterday, I ran into someone from Chattanooga who I did not expect to see at this conference. This young woman was an advisor. She was on staff at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, advising students. She was a young college graduate and landed a job at UTC working as an advisor for students. And she also was a head coach for a dancing team. This was a staff member at UTC who went to UTC as a student, got a job at UTC. You're following the story. And we met, and she just became my little sister. And so through my relationship with this young woman and the relationship that she had with students at UTC, I'm like, let me connect you to this power company in Chattanooga that has like really strong female mentors and leaders. And I think the young women on your dance team could really benefit from that. So I took this young woman under my wing, brought her and these other young college students to EPB so they can get mentored. And after that, this young woman who represented herself and those young girls in that room with all of the leaders from our electric power board and power company fell in love with this young woman and offered her a job like a week later. And she's like, I don't know if I want to do it. I said, girl, you better go and ask them for more money. You better ask them for more money than UTC is paying you. And now she works for our electric power company and uses her gifts and skills now to reach out and connect that power company to the Future Ready Institutes and students in public schools. So I had my script about, my background and how long I've worked with high school students, but I want to fast forward and ground it, not even in just college students, but as a staff member or as an employee. We still all need to know who we are, where we're going, and how in the hell we gonna get there. And so I just want Ashley McKnight to stand up in the room because she is in the back of the room and she is kicking tail at EPB. Thank you so much, Ashley. You know I love you, girl. Okay. But when students arrive on campus, I don't know if we do the best job at helping them make all the connections about where they need to go. We have work to do, and I've got lots of stats about how the University of Tennessee system is getting it right, but the onus is not just on practitioners in K-12 or higher ed or chambers or workforce. It takes everyone working together, and it takes a belief in everyone that we can help them figure out who they are, where they're going, and be the person to help them get there. And I'm glad that God allowed me just a small piece in Ashley's life to help her get to EPB. So I hope you all say hi to her when you see her today.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm glad you went off script. So I'm going to turn to Erica here. As you know, early college is not always integrated fully into a purposeful pathway. Sometimes it's a set of courses, kind of a standalone program. Massachusetts is ahead of the curve with early college. Can you tell us what that looks like when it works well?
Yeah. That story that I shared about Anne, I think is an example of what it looks like when it's working well. I think of the duck on water. If you look above the surface, it looks like a lot of engaged students. Looks calm, and these students are going in a direction they know and know who they are, and they know who can help them get there. Underneath the surface, there's just so much coordination. And I think that's one of the things about this report that I feel most proud of is the sense of real shared accountability and ownership. And it's probably what I feel most proud of about our work in Massachusetts is this bringing together of the different sectors. And I don't think there's any perfect way to do it. I don't think any of us have mastered it exactly. I think it really comes down to fortitude and long-term sort of commitment to the work. We have a group that brings together K-12, higher ed, policymakers, different intermediaries. We meet every Monday and talk strategy. It's that kind of work. I don't think it has to depend on, heroes. I think it has to depend on just long-term committed work. Yeah.
Jamie, in terms of employer engagement, in a similar kind of vein here, not always as kind of connected to this sort of purposeful pathway, where do you see it working well, and what in the commission's material could really help employers as they build that sort of approach?
Yeah, I'm excited about the embrace of career-connected learning, and I know that there are so many districts out there, so many initiatives in which employers are invited to the table. Sometimes we're required to bring employers to the table to speak up, but the leadership role that they need to play, because at the end of the day, they have the jobs, they're the most familiar with the skills that are essential for people to be successful in those roles. We really need to change what that role looks like in terms of their engagement in education and business partnerships. And so we really advocate at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation for employers to co-design talent solutions with their education and training partners. And that looks different probably at the post-secondary level than it does at the K-12 level, but that's why I really liked the report's emphasis and expansion of the definition when we think about work-based learning and really try to broaden it more so to career-connected learning, to recognize not all employers are going to be able to offer internships or be a part of an apprenticeship program, particularly our small to medium-sized businesses. So making sure that we have enough options on the menu for them to engage in really meaningful ways is absolutely critical. And what I want to make sure people don't miss out on in these resources is this report is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous and has so much fantastic information in it. But on the QR code on the interior of the report, there is a link for you to access high-impact practice guides and an enabling condition guide. Those are the two that I really think that I'll call out to our community because it shows you those tactical steps and those ingredients of like, what do we need to get this work done? And when I think of the employer community, they're often wanting to know, like, what do we need to do to get this work done? And so I highly, highly encourage you to take a look at those examples and think through how we can engage employers in a different way. Of course, keep inviting them to the table, but just like education and training partners, there are a lot of demands on their time. And so something that I always encourage folks is to think about where are all employers already convening in your community? Shout out to my talent pipeline management partners in the room. I see Madison from Colorado Succeeds and Jennifer Miller from Greater Phoenix Chamber. I know Latasha with Memphis Medical District Collaborative is in the back. They are doing a phenomenal job of bringing groups of employers together to work through their talent pain points so that you're not doing these one-off initiatives. And that's where I think the enabling conditions and the high-impact practice guides can really come in handy. So I'm excited to see that play out more and more.
Thanks, Jamie. This is a refreshingly non-siloed panel. We're looking across silos. Laz, you do that in your job as a district leader and in the community college space as well. Can you talk about where you've seen community colleges in K-12 misaligned and what you've done locally, what you've seen done locally to close that gap?
Well, to some extent, they were misaligned by design. So historically, we've had distinct funding, accountability systems, and even distinct purposes. When I used to be a high school principal, my only goal was to get a kid to graduation. And I was like, all right, we're done. We were a success. And the reality is the world has changed and that it's not enough. You need more than a high school diploma, we know, to be competitive in this new economy. And so the rules of the road really have changed significantly in this last decade because of all those reasons and more. And so that is why I think one of the call-outs in this report is really to build these community teams to help bridge those connections.
Great. Stacy, thank you. Looking upstream from your perspective in higher ed, can you talk about missed opportunities in closing that gap between high school and higher ed, what you've seen, what you'd like to see more of?
So a couple of things. Pathways are powered by relationships and people and not just programs. I think we often operate in the higher ed space and really siloed, just are very siloed, and sometimes students in one college may have better opportunities in that college because it's the College of Business or the College of Engineering. And I think we need to make the career-connected map and the academic map in higher ed a lot clearer to students when they come in as first-year students or as freshmen. Just like we want high schools to get it right and middle schools to get it right so they can see that trajectory, I think we need to kind of take out the bureaucracy and the funky language that a lot of students don't really understand to make that academic roadmap a lot clearer to their connection points. And also just connecting students to social capital, mentors in colleges, and faculty relationships, and those relationships with employers. And not every faculty member knows how to build a relationship. If you spent the last 30 years being a biochemist or doing research, sometimes that professional development and professional learning in the faculty realm is important so they know how to build those relationships with students. And I will also say, we in higher ed assume that everyone just understands the value of higher education. Like, there's a narrative that we're fighting now where people think that college isn't worth it. And while we know that it's worth it because we know that tuition only increases annually 1.4% below inflation, and that 55% of the students and graduates from the UT system graduate without any debt. And I mean, we know all of this and we pat ourselves on the back for that. But parents and students don't know it, and they don't know what it means for them. And so I think we have to do a better job of communicating what that value is in a language that reaches students and families so that they can make informed decisions and not fight yet another barrier because they don't understand what we already know that we assume that they should know.
Stacy, I want to stick with you for a minute. I'm glad you brought up the point of the kind of sliding faith in the value of college in this country. Obviously, higher education is under a lot of attacks as well. It's a tough time for universities, but I think we can't lose track of the fact that higher ed does need to change. And I think that's not me talking. That's the broad consensus here. Could you give us a sense of where you'd like to see your industry do more?
Well, here is what I want to brag on the system as well as the University of Tennessee. So I'm with the University of Tennessee system, and then University of Tennessee at Chattanooga is part of that system. Well, just a few days ago, our strategic plan at the system level as well as in Chattanooga has embedded workforce learning and workforce development and experiential learning and community engagement and impact as pillars of that. Mm-hmm. And I think that is that is an acknowledgement that we have to move with the trends, and there is definitely an acknowledgement at the system level and college level that we need to do more and we need to do better. And so I think we're bringing workforce, we're bringing chamber to the table, we're partnering with K-12 in different ways, in different sectors. And so the call out in the strategic plan really is what I'm proud about, and how we are holding ourselves accountable to the metrics and what that means for graduates and how we measure the impact and the success of our education as well.
Well, as a national reporter, I can tell you Tennessee always punches above its weight. It honestly, ahead of the curve when it comes to things like performance funding or free community college. So folks should definitely check out that plan. Erica, you're uniquely situated to see, the handoffs from K-12 to college to the workforce. I think when we talk about experiments that are really worth emulating in this country, they're blurred. Those boundaries are blurred. But let's start with the problem. Like, where do you see the handoffs breaking down, and where would you like to see improvements?
Yeah. I think of the breakdowns in sort of being in two categories. One is sort of the hardware and one is the software. On the hardware side, this is when there's breaks between parts of the silos. So examples would be when credits don't easily transfer between one college to another, or when your high school graduation requirement actually doesn't set you up for even the minimum standard eligibility for your state universities. I think on the software side, it's more about information breakdown. There's just not enough good information coming to students around their future life choices when it comes to career. What jobs are there? What kind of income could I expect from those jobs? And what do I need to do to prepare myself for them? Some of the unlocks that I have seen and hope to see more of, the start of an early college, high school, is when a college and a high school get in the room and they align their course sequences. And they say, okay, we're not going to have the kids try to figure this out. We are going to come up with the right course sequences for these various career paths. That is feasible. It's hard work, but there's so many problems that feel much harder to solve than that one. We can do that. Sure. Another would be state policy that increases credit transferability. Don't leave that to campuses to figure out with articulation agreements alone. Mandate this at the state level. Increasingly, I think on the information flow, we see more employers coming to the table and saying, one of the most common questions we get in Massachusetts, employers saying, what can we do? How can we help? And I think the more we can be organizing that information so students have access to information about their future life choices, the better.
Sure, thank you. Glad you mentioned policy, Jamie. I want to turn to you. Looking from an employer perspective, in the context of, obviously, folks are still going to need post-secondary education. I think most experts would agree, even more so. We're not going to talk about AI on this panel, but we could. And likely to drive more need for education. That said, I think an increasing number of folks don't see that that's necessary. And from a policy lens, what could help there? What could help both drive benefits for students and employers?
Yeah, I like the way that you pose the question because I think too often we think about that as an either or. We're either going to meet students' needs or we're going to meet employers' needs. And it does not have to be either or. We need to stop talking about it that way. And so I really appreciate those communities that have either at the local level, the regional level, the state level, have thought about like how can we achieve both and where can we kind of demonstrate proof of practice to then influence where a policy should go, where we have those more meaningful partnerships. How many people in this room love a grant? Y'all love a grant, right? But how often have we gotten a grant and we've not thought beyond the grant? And I'm not, saying that as a grant-funded organization. I'd be, I need to slap my own hand. But we're constantly pushing at ourselves to think beyond the grant. What happens when a grant ends? Does that program go away because it didn't provide the value it needs? No, we have to be thinking about how is this work going to be sustained? And so when we think about policy and an incentive structure, we have to push ourselves to think about the big picture and making sure that we didn't rush to apply for a grant because it was an exciting funding opportunity. It's, did that actually serve both the students' needs as well as the end customer? And for the purpose of these talent pipelines, our end customers are employers. And we always like to say, employers vote with their feet. So if they're happy, then they're going to continue to invest in that program, recruit students from those programs of study. So how can we realign our incentive structures and try to reconfigure our policies so that we are demonstrating and reacting to things that are working well and meeting both of those needs as opposed to choosing one or the other?
Just briefly on that, because I love the way you responded there. Where are we generally in state capitals in DC in terms of lawmakers seeing that you can really have both sides in policy? Is there a general sense that we're moving in the right direction?
Maybe pockets. I think that too often we're holding up these isolated examples as opposed to really seeing like where are there broad systems change opportunities. I think that there's some acknowledgement, for instance, in apprenticeship, right, of just like how burdensome it is in terms of regulatory and the need for reporting and whatnot, and starting to think, how can we make this more accessible to employers, which in turn will make it more accessible to learners and workers because they'll be able to access more opportunities. So I think there is some of that, some acknowledgement of it, but is it the degree that we need? No, and so we have to continue to I kind of go around the system in some ways of attacking this from a programmatic standpoint to make that case for the policy change.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody likes apprenticeship, incentives for employers to more easily create more benefit students who want apprenticeships. Thank you for indulging that. Laz, you talked earlier about District 214's strong employer relationships. You obviously do a lot of career connected learning. How did you get there? Give us a sense of like this, how you built the ingredients for building those relationships.
Sure, thank you. I would say two things. One, we, as a state, we created the infrastructure in order to really deliver this at scale. And that was, we eliminated the silos among all of our state agencies, from K-12 to higher ed to our Department of Commerce, all of our workforce groups. And we came together in part with the support of Ed Systems, which is out of Northern Illinois University. It's a public intermediary. And we did something as simple as defining key terms through our Career Pathways Dictionary. We passed legislation that changed the accountability system for K-12. We launched post-secondary profiles, which is a post-secondary school report card that identifies a lot of the metrics that we need related to career pathways for students. So as a state, we identified and valued this work in our infrastructure, in our accountability systems. And then locally, we really had three guiding principles in order to deliver this work at scale. The first one was a sequence of courses that lead beyond high school, meaning every course in the high school led somewhere. And that had significant implications. That means some courses no longer existed. That means we had to make choices, right? And it also meant we had to work with employers to figure out what were the right electives and the right pathways. Second, that every pathway had an embedded work-based learning experience. That is a significant challenge. We're working with hundreds of employers. What that meant is we actually started our own intermediary organization within our school district, the Center for Career Discovery, which we funded with all our public funding streams, federal and state dollars, without any new money. And that office facilitates literally thousands of work-based learning experiences and individual student placements, as well as our apprenticeships. And then third, we have some early college experience in every single pathway. That means that we now have 7 higher ed partners, private, public, community colleges, and four-year universities, depending on the pathway and what's the right fit for the student. And we did that at scale, developing close to 40 pathways across the district. But those were the 3 key principles that really have led that work. There's this very significant process we go through as we develop each pathway. It takes, I will tell you, probably 2 to 3 years to fully develop and implement a pathway. It is not a quick overnight process, but it requires that because you really are engaging the entire community to get the buy-in. And then I would say one more last thing as far as the key ingredient is I know a pathway is successful when the student-facing adults own it. Meaning, my role is to bring the relationships together, spend some money, bring the food, and set the table so everybody can come together to make these things happen. I know the pathway is working when the teachers are calling me and asking me for money and say, hey, we need a new piece of equipment. Hey, there's this new employer that came in, and they own it. And those teachers and the employers in that pathway, and I am no longer the driver, they are owning it, and they are improving it year over year.
I just want to quickly underscore something you said there, because I've not heard of a district doing anything like it. Creating the intermediary to provide experiential, career-connected, work-based learning, whatever you want to call it, to each student. I mean, that's the holy grail, right? So, like, how, for people who want to try that,
yes,
can you just give a sense of what sort of funding is required, how
yes,
to pursue it, how to keep it sustainable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be glad to share because I actually have it documented. It really is all sort of funding streams that are currently going to your schools. There are some more unique partnerships, like with the Department of Rehabilitation Services, but what we did is we braided all of those funding streams. Those that are focused on vocational education for special education students, Title I, federal dollars, Title II, Title III, some philanthropic dollars related to supporting apprenticeships that flow from the Department of Labor to the state. So bringing all that together and then centralizing that work. Because if you can centralize it and bring it all together, then you can maximize that infrastructure to serve all students and you can get to much greater scale. And the other piece I would say is when we talk about work-based learning, we're talking about internships that are at least 30 hours or more. And the reason we landed on 30 hours is because every student can fit 30 hours as an initial experience as a minimum. And those can fit in a week, it can fit during winter breaks, it can fit after school, or it can even fit during the school day. And then what typically happens is the student repeats that process with that employer more than once or with different employers. And so it becomes, it's not easy. It's taken quite a few years, but certainly very proud of the success we've had.
Yeah, great stuff. Definitely seems like a national model for folks to study. So we've heard a little bit about social capital. The report argues that it's an essential ingredient, not nice to have. Again, I promised I'm not going to talk about AI, but I think in the context of AI, Julia Freeland-Fisher is here. If you're not familiar with her work, fantastic on the need to develop social capital, particularly in the context of AI. Stacy, you talked a little bit about social capital in your opening. What does this look like at a university? What sort of resources, people involved to make sure that you're able to do that personal touch to help students find their purpose?
You know what? It is ensuring that every academic division has the resources that it needs to provide the social capital and provide the high quality advising at the collegiate level that we're expecting high schools to provide as well. And I'm not sure, and I'm not talking just about UTC, but like I said, higher ed, it's no surprise that we kind of work in silos. So where one college may have a college of advising, there's another college or division that has to share, hundreds of students with just a few advisors. And so I think ensuring that the adults and the employees on campus also feel well supported and resourced to be able to provide that advising, connecting students to networks outside of the College of Arts and Sciences. And my friends who are in the College of Arts and Sciences may not have as many resources as our School of Business or our College of Engineering and Computer Science. And so it's just easy for me to kind of see what some of those disparities are on campus. Everyone has a great heart, but not everyone has the capacity that one college may have to create their own center for advising just for their students. So that's one. And it's also taking the responsibility and the ownership that we should be doing it and not leaving it up to the students who are not from Chattanooga and who don't know every business in Chattanooga, and not assuming that just because you're a grown student and 19, you've got to go out and get it on your own and pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And so there is this also mentality that these adult students should get it on their own. But again, sometimes you need to, be a sponsor for a student and say their name in rooms when they're not there, or think about ways to help students build networks. A lot of students are shy. So what is the introverted student supposed to do if someone's not teaching them the skill that they need to be able to go out and network? And so I think colleges have the opportunity there around maybe first year classes, mandating maybe for first year classes, teaching students some of those skills. I can go on and on, but I come from it from a very human perspective. I know I sit at the top at a systems level, but at the end of the day, it is people who empower other people and not just a system. What good is a system if there's not someone who believes in it to effectuate it in the lives of faculty, staff, and students?
Great stuff. Well said. So I want to open us up for questions in a second, but first, a quick lightning round. So let's say we're 5 years out, Purposeful Pathways are really taking hold. What is one concrete thing that would look different for a young person in your community, and one action you want people listening today to take in the next year to help us get there? Let's start with you, Erica.
Okay.
Briefly.
I think it was a student with a story with a student recently who said to me, I got a summer internship, but it was in sales and marketing. I was so bored. Every day I'd show up. I had to make these cold calls. It was terrible. So this student came back to school, said to someone, it wasn't even a formal advisor, but said to someone, I don't like this. I think I'm going to stop showing up. And this person said, no, this is part of life. You need to do the hard work in order to get access to the next piece. And the student went back and, of course, learned that this is how you get access to the next level up. I want so much for all of our students to have that kind of, caring adult feedback. I think what it takes to grow all of this is students doing really hard work that feels relevant to the future they want, surrounded by people who care. So I hope to see that built into our programs.
Great stuff. Thank you. Jamie.
I think that success would look like students having a clear understanding of what the world of work looks like. And that may be different from how jobs look in this moment, but particularly the ability to understand what durable skills are necessary to be successful in the workplace will serve them very well. One way that we can get there is as we're thinking about trying to reach employers in more meaningful ways and increase the number of employers that we're able to access, I just encourage you to think of going to where employers already are, rather than trying to create a new space. It's likely that you can go to those trusted business voices in your community and convene with employers where they're already meeting.
Thanks, Jamie. Les?
I would say access to early college experiences is not the same as developing a college identity. So my hope in my community is that because of this belonging piece that the report focuses on, that all the students would develop that college identity. And my one thing I would say is that I would hope community colleges and high schools would no longer consider themselves in competition, but would actually truly partner for the benefit of all the students, because at the end of the day, if they do that, you'll see both organizations being stronger for it.
Stacy? take some.
I'd like to, I love this idea that as a practitioner for 25 years, working as a college and career counselor for students, I always talk to students about, and their families, about finding a place that knows what to do with them. Finding a place, like go somewhere that knows what to do with a student from a single parent home, or a student from a low-income background, or a student that has dyslexia, or a student that has fill in the blank, whatever that is. But ask the question so you know that when you do come on the campus, or when you do go to the place, that you've already identified the people who can help you based on what your need is. So it is my hope that every student who comes into UTC or any University of Tennessee system school, or all of our schools, know who they are, and if they don't, we can help them figure out who they are. That we can help them know where they're going when they leave, so that when they go, they can tell you the person who helped them get there. And so for me, the nuts and bolts of it is when you come in, you are successful, you graduate, and you have a job. And I think that is the responsibility of every person who touches the life of a student, whether you're a non-traditional student, to help them be successful, not just when they come to our campus, but when they succeed through our campus.
Right on. Thank you. All right, we've got time for questions. I think there are mics moving around, so put your hand up if you've got something. Don't be shy. I think I see one way up here. We've got a runner.
Hey, good morning. I very much appreciate all of the philosophy you guys are putting out there. I have a question, especially for Dr. Lopez. This idea that high school marries with higher ed and workforce, I'm a true believer in. I've been a high school principal for 10 years. We've worked really hard to do that. My question for you, all of you, and especially for you, is where does K-8 fit in? How do you essentially start this at a younger age so that students, by the time they get to high school, are already set to go?
Great, thank you for that question. Thank you for your service. High school principal is the hardest job, but probably the most fulfilling one. Here's what I would say around K-8. So one of the design features to be able to deliver this at scale is really driving the academic electives of that school, so that a student isn't just taking foods because that's what's available. They're taking course electives that are tied to a pathway to a future, and they can use that as a discovery process, and they can change their mind every year, every semester. Half the kids that start in healthcare actually decide they don't want to do healthcare, go into something else. In order to maximize the value of that, you need K-8 to be initiating some of that career exploration activities and listening to having guest speakers and exploring all the possibilities before any of those start to get sort of shut down in their own minds, that they don't see themselves, because you really do have to see yourself in those roles. So actively going out and ensuring that students are exposed to individuals that look like their students in all of these career paths.
Please.
Provide an example really quick, and I'll share what UTC has done. In 2023, we started a program called Middle School to Mocks, where our mascot is a mockingbird, so Middle School to Mocks, and we partner with the superintendent in Hamilton County, so our district, and ask them, do you mind if we come to your middle school promotion ceremonies and offer all your 8th graders contingent acceptances into UTC? They said, yeah. So we galvanized a bunch of volunteers. They went in and they gave us 5 minutes on the program of each middle school promotion ceremony, whether it was an alumni or the provost or like leaders that we galvanized to go volunteer. And it's something really simple. We gave them a certificate, and on the back it had, as of today, here are what the requirements are. It's 9,000 students to date now that have received that. And now they're in our CSM system. And we didn't even have 10th and 11th and 12th graders in our CSM system. And so now that first batch of students could be entering into UTC in 2027. So I also think it's the onus is, the responsibility is on colleges thinking creatively and innovatively to meet campuses where they are. And now every 8th grader or every middle school student is invited to our campus. Their families are invited to our campus. We've partnered with counselors to invite 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th graders. Have your senior retreats here. Invite them to our campus to provide free foods, free spot, free location to host some of their programs. And I think that's a great way of building relationships in a very tangible way that colleges and universities can have with their community districts and schools.
Other questions? I think we have one over here.
Hello. Hi. My name is Lola Latan. I'm a program specialist at Rodell, and my question is open-ended for any of the panelists. Thinking through some of the programs and some services at colleges in career advising, a lot of the nuances of after college within benefits and navigating what you do with your insurance and financial literacy and stuff like that might be more talked about versus those entering right from into the workforce might not get those resources. So what are some of the ways that you are supporting students who are taking trade apprenticeships, going into the military, and helping them navigate those aspects of adulthood?
Who wants to take that?
Call set up with an organization just next week called Work-Life Partnership, and I think that more employers and communities are trying to access these organizations that can help play that introductory role of kind of getting accustomed and acclimated to the world of work. That's not something, admittedly, that all employers will excel at in terms of their onboarding process. So bringing in those partners who are aware of what those benefits are, but also maybe some of the barriers that learners or workers are experiencing and helping them navigate those decisions and big choices, but then also support as they're transitioning into the workforce is something that I'm really excited to see more of.
Anyone else? That's fine.
Paul, to your left.
Yep. Yep. Over here. Yep.
I wanted to double down on one of the focal point of employers, because that from the report and then the things that you guys have punctuated, could not agree more on shifting the unique value proposition of our K-12 districts looking up and rethinking from being graduation checklist to catalyst to credential. I want to go to the other bookend of that because there's the shifting the unique value proposition for our employers from corporate social responsibility back into authentic investment into the caps and gowns that are inside of this pipeline. And wanted to just give you a chance to showcase, like, what does that authentic investment look like? Who are the upper 1%ers? And then specifically, what are some high leverage, low lift? I don't know if that's the appropriate idiom, but what are some of the things that we need to be looking into when we talk about regionalizing our employers and really shifting this narrative?
You all ask good questions. Who wants to? Jamie, do you want to? Yeah.
I've got a lot of examples like right here in the room. So some of those partners that I mentioned on the front end, I highly encourage you to engage with Madison up here at the front. Jennifer's over here with her Arizona folks. Latasha's in the back. Joshua Scott from San Antonio. They have engaged, again, groups of employers as opposed to one-off employers, which just allows for a lot more impact. And I totally agree with you that it does not just have to be a CSR pitch. In fact, we would encourage you to lean in with the ROI pitch. You can still, do good and do well at the same time. And so what we've seen that to look like is giving employers that, we call it the safe space, to air out their dirty laundry, to discuss all their grievances, but then to get really smart about kind of rediscovering the demand planning process of like, okay, which are the jobs that are most critical to us? How can we better articulate the skills that are really necessary to be successful in those roles? Because I'm sure many of us in this room have been frustrated by a lack of clarity of like, what is needed for the workforce? Like, what do you want from us? And what do you want from our students? We're willing to do it. We just need you to articulate what it is. So sometimes providing a space for employers to do that with a trusted intermediary, with a voice of business, to then be able to play that translation role and then bring educators to the table to say, I know you've got a lot of great programs. I know you have a lot of fantastic solutions. Let's share with you the data, the primary labor market information that we have available as a collective group of employers all experiencing the same challenge. Let us share that with you, and then yes, some of your programs may be applicable, but there might be some other solutions that we want to explore and co-design those together. And again, that backing of data can be really, really important, because a lot of times policymakers, people at the state level with all the good intentions, they look at labor market information that's available to them and it doesn't tell the whole story. They then go down a different path to try to create programs and help support capacity for jobs that employers, those listings are outdated, or they don't really capture what is keeping those employers up at night. So what I would suggest what that looks like is providing that space for employers to be amongst themselves and to get those facts straight. They'll likely come to you much more effective, much more clear partners of what those needs are, and be more willing to come to the table with, okay, well, here are the resources that I have available that I can pitch in. And sometimes that's time, sometimes that's providing mentorship and coaching to your students, participating in robotics competitions for middle schools, but really allowing them to get clear on what those needs are.
Les, you want to?
I just wanted to add that the way we've engaged employers is change the value proposition. So for our work-based learning, students that we're placing are students that are typically senior year of high school. They're after their junior year. They've taken several courses in the pathway. They may have already earned many credentials in that pathway. Think of IT, think of manufacturing. And they've already committed in that pathway through several years. So it becomes part of the talent pipeline management strategy, which I'd encourage you to check out the Chamber's work in that space, their strategies. But the value proposition is you're getting somebody, a student who's really going to be able to contribute fairly quickly, and that has changed the dynamic and given us credibility with these employers. It's not some career exploration experience.
Well, I think we have one more minute, so quick question here, please.
Neil, Boston Private Industry Council, and I'm intrigued by particularly the K-12 level, how we accelerate a drive towards purposeful pathways, and that's fun to try to say those words together, right? But is it a policy level from school boards? Because I know we're talking about states, but particularly K-12, it's very local with school boards. Is it pushing them? Is it being pulled by the district itself? I'm interested in your thoughts, the commission's thoughts on influencing boards and superintendents to move towards this pathway.
All right, local policy chains. Who wants to do a quickie?
We only have about 20 seconds or so. I'll do really quickly. It really is about deciding you want to allocate those resources to develop those elective course sequences at the local level.
I would say it's all of it, and that's the beauty of the report, because I think it speaks to all stakeholders. And there are guides and action guides and enabling conditions, I think, for every stakeholder to see themselves in, to kind of make this make sense in their kind of realm. And so it's simple. It's everyone. It's everyone's responsibility.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Please give a hand of applause for excellent planning.